Winter Roses, Summer by fairytalelovr. Chapter 30. Bear witness to my vow. The guards had helped to carefully move Lady to a large table nearby, so that by the time the Maester Walken arrived, he had a room to work. The stableman and the kennel master had been called for assistance as well, and it took a collective effort with the guards and Sansa soothing to hold the direwolf down to remove the arrow. Benjen had gone to the kitchens and gotten as much food as he could carry. Sansa took a broiled rabbit and cut it up into pieces, feeding it to Lady slowly as the Maester worked. Nymeria took a whole cooked hare and laid down, devouring it in mere moments before reaching for another. Whatever had happened in the past 6 moons, the journey back to the Blessed Island had been rough on the direwolves.
"But I thought the king had ordered Lady be put down," Arya said from her place next to Nymeria.
Sansa had been too happy to ask any questions, hugging Ned to the point he had trouble breathing. He blushed, looking away from them.
Cersei called for her pelt, but Robert left the room telling me to do whatever needed to be done. He never said he wanted Lady dead.
Ella chuckled as she sat down next to Arya with a few rags and a bowl of water. Now that Nymeria had eaten her fill, she reluctantly allowed them to fuss over her dirty fur. Ella knew Arya could simply take the direwolf out to the river, but she wanted to check if the caked blood came from Lady's wound, or if Nymeria herself had been harmed.
"But how did they find their way back?" Robb asked. "If they got lost at the Crown Lands, that's a long way to come." "They're not beasts, Robb," Ned said. "They remembered the way back. Besides, I sent men to bring Lady to Winterfell, and I told them to keep an eye out for Nymeria. I haven't heard from them, now that I think about it. I wonder what happened."
"Maester," Ella called, "can you tell how long the injury happened?"
"I would say about a fortnight. The flesh has already begun to grow over the arrow, which I believe matches the timeline of Lady Sansa's pains."
Ella nodded in agreement.
"How could she survive that?"
Sansa said, now tilting a bowl of water that Lady drank gratefully.
"Normal wolves are resilient animals, my lady," the Maester replied as he fussed over the wound. "I can only imagine how much stronger direwolves are. Besides, the arrow didn't pierce any major vessels, so once the bleeding stopped, it was only a major inconvenience." "It's been 6 months since the incident at the road," Ned said. "Why did it take them this long?"
"They might know the general direction, Ned," Ella said, "but I doubt they know the path of the road or even worry about schedules. Besides, until they got to White Harbour, no one was guiding them."
"Will she be all right, Maester?"
Sansa asked, uncaring about anything else.
"She should be. If she rests and doesn't put stress on the shoulder, she should heal perfectly. I'll come by every day to check on her." "Thank you, Maester," Ned said, as the man picked up his things and left. "I would like to commend your men, Lord Manderley, for sending them over." "Not for this, Lord Stark," Wyman said. "Direwolves are easy to spot, and the whole north knows they belong to the Starks." "Does the king know?" Benjen asked. "I didn't tell him what I did. Merely sent word that I had fulfilled his order and done what I found necessary." "Perhaps it would be best to inform him personally," Benjen said. Ned sighed. "You're probably right. We should keep it as quiet as possible."
"Does this mean that they can't come with us?" Sansa asked. "Nymeria is not coming!"
Arya exclaimed.
"I want her nowhere around the Lannisters. They'll just find a way to hurt her. I'd rather she stay here and safe."
Sansa nodded, conceding the point, however, begrudgingly. Ella, satisfied that Nymeria wasn't hurt, took the bowl and rags and went to Lady, cleaning the area the Maester hadn't, knowing that there would be no river baths in her immediate future. "So, what is to be done?" Jon asked. "We keep this as quiet as we can," Ned decided. "We don't need to hide them, but we shouldn't flaunt them either. Keep them inside or out of view until everyone leaves the island."
"Lady can stay in my room," Sansa said. "She needs to recover anyway." "Nymeria won't be locked up," Arya stated. "Well, but she's like you. She doesn't like people."
Sansa added. "Girls, girls!" Ella called, preventing a fight from even starting, seeing as Arya got furious. She looked at Sansa with a raised brow.
"I'm sorry, Arya. I didn't mean to offend you,"
the redhead said, annoyed.
"I'm sure you didn't,"
Arya muttered under her breath, then sighed when she saw Ella's expression.
You are forgiven.
Robb bit back a chuckle. Acceptable Dayne could take a few lessons from Ella,
he whispered to Jon, making sure the rest of the family didn't hear.
Robb smiled as Margaery came out into the garden.
She joined him with a soft smile.
Thank you for coming, he said. I thought I should make up for the disbanding of our picnic earlier.
You didn't have to, but I'm glad you did. He offered his arm, and she took it so they could walk around the gardens. Robb led them to the southern side, that would open to a large terrace overseeing the narrow sea.
Have my siblings made you regret our match yet, my lady?
Margaery chuckled. On the contrary, my lord. It only gladdens me. I come from a big family, you see, so it warms my heart to see how you and your siblings are united.
I hear you and your brothers are also very close.
We are family. If you can't love family, then who can you love?
Robb smiled. Very well put, my lady.
They arrived at the terrace, and the trees opened to the vista.
Margaery gasped. It's beautiful. It seems infinite.
The sky was tainted with the pink and orange hues of sunset, and Robb smiled at how the dimming light caught in her hair, which was flowing softly in the wind.
We are going riding the day after tomorrow. Only the siblings,
he said, almost fumbling with the words.
Would you concede me the honour of joining us?
She smiled, turning around to Robb.
It would be a pleasure, my lord.
Good, he smiled,
though anxiety was bubbling up in his stomach. He really did get it. This was a world apart from sweet-talking one of the Wintertown girls for a little fun, or even one of the noble daughters for a dance.
I got you something. I hope. You don't have to wear it. I just... Robb blushed. Gods, the Yon would laugh infinitely at me. It's a token, my lady. Or a prayer that you won't forget me till we have a chance to meet again.
I doubt I could forget you, my lord, even if we were not betrothed,
Margaery said, accepting the offered box with a sweet smile.
She gasped when she opened it, and her smile grew. The silver direwolf glinted in the sunlight, along with the sunstone standing in for an eye.
It reminded me of your eyes, my lady,
Robb said, blushing a bit.
It's marvellous!
She took the necklace from its velvet bedding and held it out.
Would you?
Robb smiled and took the jewel, waiting as Margaery turned and lifted her long, thick, wavy brown hair out of the way so that he could clasp it around her neck. When the sun had vanished beneath the horizon, and the guards had taken torches to escort them back to the castle, Robb was stuck thinking that her smile would haunt him for a long time to come. Daenerys walked into her bedchambers that night and immediately smiled. In the short time since she had fed Lyanna and went to deal with a household issue, Jon had come and put their daughter to sleep. And himself too. He was lying back on the chaise lounge, fast asleep, and Lyanna was cuddled on his chest, her tiny fists clutching his tunic. Mary, the girl's nurse, knocked softly on the door and smiled after being granted entrance.
Should I come back later, my lady? No, no, Dany whispered. He'll wake up cursing this chair if he sleeps all night like this. I'll get her.
As carefully as she could, she tried to wrench Jon's tunic free of Lyanna's hands, but the girl didn't seem keen on allowing him even in her sleep. The jostling, however, made Jon straighten his arms around his daughter and stir. He blinked owlishly until Dany's face came into focus.
Whoa,
he said, his voice gruff from sleep.
Bedtime, love. Come on, let me get her to her cradle.
Nah, she's fine here.
Dany chuckled. Come on, Jon. You'll be complaining about backaches if you sleep here.
He blinked a bit more, unable to stifle a huge yawn.
You're right.
Instead of surrendering Lyanna, though, he simply adjusted his grip on her and stood up, crossing the room to their bed, which had already been turned down. He set the baby in the middle and got into his side, pulling the furs up around them, putting an arm protectively around Lyanna, and falling asleep again before Dany even had time to react.
Mary smiled. I'll be in the nursery, my lady. Send for me or bring her over whenever you're ready. Good night, Mary,
Dany said, still amused. After Doreah and Irri had helped her out of her dress and into her nightclothes, Daenerys joined her husband and daughter, warmed by their embraces much more than the furs. Loud laughter and thumping hooves permeated the morning air, along with the occasional direwolf bark. They were about 2 hours southeast of the castle, since Arya had insisted on going as close as she could to the volcano. Ella had shut down the girls' initial idea to ride all the way there on the very first day, and much more strongly once Benjen had said it was roughly a 5-day journey. Robb called for them to stop and have their picnic. Although he wasn't complaining, Bran was visibly uncomfortable, and it was better for him to rest before they rode back to the Midnight Fortress. Sansa had surprised her brothers by coming down to the courtyard wearing riding breeches and a leather jerkin underneath a light cloak. With the time to sow the fields quickly approaching, the thicker northern furs were unnecessary, but the wind was still chilly enough to cut, especially while riding at speed. Robb had also been pleasantly surprised to see Margaery dressed to ride instead of wearing a silly southern dress. He had blushed furiously when he saw that she had the direwolf necklace on. Jon let Winterstorm graze on the grass, and went to Dany as she dismounted.
"We should do this more,"
he said, admiring the way a few strands of silver hair had gotten loose from her usually tight braid.
"It's been forever since we last came riding."
She smiled, exhilarated with the adrenaline their gallop had brought on. "We've been too busy with the wedding and the tourney. But I agree, we should make more time for this."
"How long until we can bring Lyanna, you reckoned?"
She threw back her head with laughter. "As eager as I am. What about we wait until she can at least walk on her own?"
Jon nodded. "Aye, sounds sensible."
Oris found a fallen tree trunk and with the help of 2 other guards brought it over so Bran had someone to lean against. Irri started to lay down the food as the siblings Daenerys, Margaery, Ghost, Greywind, Nymeria and Summer settled down and relaxed from the ride. It was a meal filled with laughter and the bittersweet aura of goodbye. Some guests had already started to leave the day before, and Ned, Ella, Sansa and Arya were leaving the next day. Robb would return to Winterfell with Bran and Jojen Reed the day after, so the family was once again to part ways. Arya convinced Irri to give her a ride on the Dothraki way to ride, so the girls were back on their horses nearby. Robb had provoked Jon, and now they were sparring lightly to Bran's amusement. The direwolves had devised their own game and were running around as well, Nymeria seamlessly integrating as if she'd never left at all, and they had been playing together ever since Winterfell. Oris finally interrupted the joy once the sun had started to descend to the middle of the sky. Arya and Bran had been the most vocal against it.
"I'm sorry, my lady," the guard said, amused, "but it's 2 hours at least to the castle, and Lord Stark will have my head if I let our return be after dark."
Jon and Robb rounded everyone up.
"And we have a feast expecting us," the oldest said. "It would be bad form for Jon and Dany to be absent."
They rode into the village by sunset and reached the courtyard with the last of the light. Jon hoisted Bran from his horse and onto the wheeled chair, though the boy was dangerously close to falling asleep. Ned stopped by the top of the stairs, frowning at the man who was watching his children arrive at the courtyard down below.
"Is there something you need, Sir Jaime?"
The King's guard was startled and turned around. For a moment, Ned thought he saw guilt and regret in the man's eyes, intensified when he caught sight of Lyanna in her grandfather's arms. But the blonde was quick in letting his mask of flippancy take over. "Nothing I could ever need could come from you, Lord Stark," Jaime sneered in his usual arrogant tone. And with that he disappeared behind the red entrance door. Lyanna squealed, reaching out with her little hand in the direction of her parents, so Ned let it go and descended the stairs. Jon took his daughter and threw her up into the air, prompting delighted giggles from the girl and a censoring glare from his wife. Watching the scene in front of him, most of his children together, and having spent a leisure day together, Ned almost regretted having to go back to King's Landing. If he had never accepted Robert's offer, they would all still be in Winterfell, a whole family. But then he wouldn't have Ella, and that wasn't a reasonable trade, as family wouldn't be whole anymore. Ella found him an hour later, sitting on the fallen tree trunk in front of the heart tree in the Goldswood. "The feast is about to start." He sighed.
"I know. Sorry. The Goldswood of the Red Keep feels stifling. I miss the peace of Winterfell. The trees there are old, like these, and the gods don't feel forsaken."
"I'm sorry we can't go back to Winterfell. I know you wanted to."
"It would have meant at least another moon. I can't be away for that long.
Ella knew nothing would take his melancholy away. Was this part of the original castle? I wouldn't have thought that old Valyrians worshipped the old gods.
No, they didn't. But they didn't take down the trees, at least. We grew the original walls of the castle to accommodate this area.
Ned, what is it? I can see you were in a mood. Let me help. He sighed again.
I married Catelyn in a sept. In 17 years. I never took her to a heart tree and repeated our vows before my gods. I wonder if that is not the reason why my marriage was cursed.
Unsure of the best way to answer, Ella took a moment of pause. I think the problems of your marriage to Catelyn had too many sources for it to be only that.
When we marry in that sept, you won't even be able to use your own name, your own maiden cloak. I'm scared that our union will be cursed with the web of lies we will weave it into.
Before Ella could respond, Benjen broke into their bubble. Oh, sorry. I didn't... Everyone is looking for you, Ned. We're coming, he said, standing up. Ella took his hand he offered her, but held his arm. They can wait a few more moments. Benjen, would you do something?
Ned's eyes widened. What are you thinking?
You know what I'm thinking.
There are no witnesses.
The gods are the only witnesses we need. And before you talk about the children, I fully intend to use my name, and that's in front of all of them or none of them. So unless you're planning on telling Bran and the girls...
Ned smiled. You're mad.
You've never complained before, she shrugged.
Are you sure?
Yes. Benjen, would you be a dear? Chuckling, Benjen stood in front of the heart tree. Who comes before the old gods tonight? Lady Ashara of House Dayne, she said, opening with a big smile, comes here to be wed. And who comes to claim her? Lord Eddard of House Stark, Lord of Winterfell, Lord Paramount of the North, Warden of the North, and Hand of the King, he said, smiling brightly and widely. Lady Ashara, do you take this man? Absolutely yes. Then, in front of the old gods, I, finally, declare you man and wife, Benjen said happily. Chuckling, she took Ned's hands and they knelt before his gods to ask for their blessing. The voyage back to the capital was as uneventful as the way over had been. Considering what had greeted him the last time he had ridden into the courtyard of the Tower of the Hand, Ned shouldn't have been surprised that there was a steward there waiting for him with news that the king had requested his presence at his earliest convenience. Sighing, he changed out of his travelling clothes and freshened up, leaving Ella to settle their arrival. He was startled to find Cersei in Robert's chambers, and more so that they didn't seem to have been arguing lately.
Ned, the king exclaimed, there you are! Gods, you were gone long enough. 40 days, your grace. I hope there was no matter that was hindered by my absence.
Several matters, I would say, Cersei sneered. The place of the Hand is next to the king, Lord Stark. I'm sure you know that.
Oh, shut up, woman, Robert said. You can hardly fault the man for attending his brother's wedding. Besides, he had to meet his granddaughter.
I'm sure Lord Benjen would understand, and Lord Starling would bring the girl here.
I said shut up. It's done. Stop complaining.
Cersei narrowed her eyes in anger. It's been quite the gossip of court. All the ravens coming from the Blessed Island in the past few weeks. Did you know, my king, that your beloved Hand is going to marry a commoner?
Ned wanted to roll his eyes. What a petty, insufferable woman. I can't really fault Robert for not liking her. I know, yes, Robert said. What of it?
Cersei was thrown, clearly having expected to cause discord between the friends.
What of? Robert, are you mad?
Careful now, Cersei,
the king cautioned in a grave tone.
The Hand of the king, the Lord of Winterfell, is once again a bachelor, and instead of using it to your advantage...
All due respect to your grace, Ned cut in coldly, but as you said, I am the Lord of Winterfell and Warden of the North before I am Hand of the King. If anyone is choosing my bride, it's me.
Cersei snorted. And you choose a lowly commoner? With the 7 kingdoms at your disposal, you go for a nobody.
I hardly think my marriage choices are any concern of the Queen's. Well put, my friend, Robert exclaimed. Stop meddling, Cersei. If Lord Stark wants alliances, it's his own business.
Perhaps Lord Stark was too busy forging alliances for his sons.
As well he should, Robert said. Stop meddling, a woman, I'm warning you.
Like betrothing his eldest son, his heir, to Margaery Tyrell, Cersei declared with a glint of venom in her eyes.
What? Robert was taken aback. Robb and a Tyrell? Whatever for?
I think I hardly need remind you, my royal husband, Cersei continued, and Ned could almost see the poison dripping down her chin as she spoke, that the Tyrells were staunch supporters of the Targaryens. Why would a friend of yours ever get meddled up with them? And then, of course, this same man has a Targaryen goddaughter.
Ned felt his temper flare. Enough, you blasted, cursed woman! Robert bellowed, his face crimson with anger. How dare you make this kind of accusation so lightly like this?
You're awfully quiet, Lord Stark, Cersei continued on, unabashed. Are you going to try to come up with an excuse?
Hardly, my queen,
Ned said, keeping the facade of tranquility, though his blood was pumping quickly.
I would only need an excuse if I were guilty of your senseless accusation. And I am not. I think I hardly need to remind you that when winter comes, the North suffers severely from the scarcity of food. An alliance with the rich will certainly soften that blow.
Is that why you are building a fleet, naming your Lord Admirals? To soften the blow of winter? Why you're starting construction on abandoned keeps? On Moat Cailin of all places?
Are you questioning my integrity? Ned asked furiously, his temper showing.
You raised a Targaryen and married her off to your bastard, Cersei sneered. Who knows what else you feel for the crownless dragon?
I did so on my king's orders, your grace. Again, I ask, are you questioning my loyalty to my king?
I'm questioning your actions, my lord. They are indicative of treason. Like you're planning to close the North as you rose in rebellion in support of...
Enough! Robert yelled, punching the table. Enough of this nonsense! Others take you, Cersei! You and your damned words! Be gone, and take your contempt and your poison with you!
She smiled, a dangerous, lecherous smile that made a shiver go down Ned's spine. After she was gone and the door closed, Robert trained his glass. I don't think, for even a moment, that you're planning on rising in rebellion. Good, Ned said dryly, because that would be an insult I would not take. I know that, old friend, Robert snorted. Devilish woman. Sprouting poison like a snake. He took another sip of wine. She does raise a point, though. Why are you closing up the North? I'm not closing up the North, Robert. At least not like that. Jon lives on an island and he's just discovered his mines. He wants to build up his navy. By creating a northern fleet, I'm making it so the warships will be his, but ultimately sworn to Winterfell independently of House Starling. On that note, you might remember your decree to raise House Starling to a major house when they were initially going to be sworn to White Harbour. I couldn't very well not placate Lord Manderley, so I named him Vice Admiral. And the Ironborn are starting to cause too much trouble on the western shore, so it seemed reasonable to fortify that side as well. And the keeps. I already have 4 sons, Robert, and God's willing I shall have more. The north is scarcely populated, you saw that, and it only makes things more difficult during the winters. I hope to grow the population, so we'll have more fields being planted and therefore more food. Makes sense. Now let's leave the Queen's pettiness behind us. How was the wedding? Lovely. Benjen is as happy as his clam. Poor devil. I hope his wife makes him happy and not miserable. And your granddaughter? A gem. She takes after Jon, so she looks like a Stark. And far too much like her grandmother already. Ned thought but didn't say. Robert laughed. Now that is good luck for the girl. The less she takes after her mother, the luckier she is. Ned wanted to roll his eyes. Will you ever get over your hatred for Targaryens, my friend? He thought to himself, though he already knew the answer. Ella walked into her chambers after coordinating the unloading, tired after a fortnight of travel. The hawk on the windowsill made her jump, startled, before she opened to smile. She petted the bird's head, reaching into the concealed seam of the leather pouch he wore as a chest plate, and pulled out the folded piece of parchment. "Go hunt, my friend," she said, and the hawk took flight. She then went ahead to light a candle, and held the unfolded parchment above it so that the heat could reveal the message.
Beloved Ash, Ned Stark is a bull-headed fool who doesn't deserve you, and if he breaks your heart again, I will personally break his face. And neither you, nor Lyanna, nor that tiny Crannog man will stop me this time. He'd better make an honest woman out of you, soon, or I will drag him to the sept by his ears. He dishonoured you once. He won't do it again. You turned me into a nostalgic mess with your letter, and I don't like it. I'm a knight. I have no use for frivolities. I curse the whoremonger stag and his wounded ego every day for robbing Rhaegar of, most of all, the chance to be proud of seeing his son grow up to be the amazing man I've been hearing he is. Yes, sister, news of him and his achievements have reached me and my far dwellings even before your letter. Though we should start writing more. It took me twice as long to decipher this encrypted language than usual. I'm old, sister, and have been surrounded by mostly illiterate fools. I need to have more civilized conversations with someone with brains. But tell me, when is your marriage taking place? Edric had better be there, even if he won't give you away or acknowledge your bond at all. But someone must represent our house. I miss you, sister. Simple as that. Sir Arthur Dayne, Kingsguard to the true king of the Seven Kingdoms.
End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that one. Oh, I like that one. That's really nice. Oh, Ella is married to Ned. Lady and Nymeria are staying on the Blessed Island for safety. And, ooh, Arthur Dayne. I've never read him aloud before, so this is going to be fun. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that bell to get notified for whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye, my guys, gals, and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.